Hi guys, today is April 6th. I'm hoping that this video is a total of like 15 minutes in three parts. Please take notes on the entire presentation. I am going to talk fast because it's a video and you can always go back, but let's get started. So all the characters in Romeo and Juliet are mostly divided into kind of four groups, two of them being the House of Capulet and the House of Montague. The House of Capulet is Juliet's family. As you can see here, there's basically six characters that fall into that house. The first one, and mainly being Juliet. She's a 14-year-old girl. She does not want to get married, but she is very, very controlled by her parents. And she's kind of being told by her parents that she's going to have to marry this guy, Paris, which she's not happy about. You've already read that part, and then how she's starting to fall in love with Romeo, which we'll see in a second. So that takes me to her parents. They're kind of overbearing, but they are close with Paris, which is why they want him to marry their daughter. But they are not very responsible people, and so that's part of what Juliet doesn't like about them. The nurse is kind of Juliet's closest confidant and friend. Juliet like tells the nurse everything, and it's mostly the nurse that encourages Juliet to kind of ignore what her parents are saying and go for Romeo, simply because he's nice to her and he seems like a good guy. She disagrees a little bit because Paris is like super rich, so she does think that she has good options on both sides, but she kind of supports whatever Juliet chooses to do. There's also this guy Tybalt. It's Juliet's cousin. He's kind of a jerk. He starts a lot of the fights that happen throughout the play. We'll get back to him later. Um, Tybalt will actually become a pretty main important character in Act 3, so wait for that. Rosalind is also Juliet's cousin. She doesn't really show up in the play, except for the fact that we know that Juliet was in love with her before he was in love with Juliet. So if you've had any questions about, wait, how much does Romeo actually love Juliet? How real is this relationship? Just remember that Romeo was convinced at the beginning of the play that he would never love anyone as much as Rosalind because she's more beautiful than everyone. And then, like 12 minutes later, he's completely head over heels for Juliet and is convinced that she is now the most beautiful person in the world, that he could never love anybody else. So yeah, Romeo does have some issues, and that leads us to his family. There's really only four people that come up prominently in the play that are really important here, but that's okay. So there's Romeo, also a teenage boy, probably about 14, falls in love with Juliet after falling in love with Rosalind, and he does have that tendency, right? He always falls for the wrong girls. He's always in love with Capulets, um, and a lot of his issues also stem from the fact that his parents are not very supportive. They're not always really around. So when he's going through these things like being super enamored with marriage and like wanting relationship and all of those things, we kind of feel bad for him because he doesn't really have anyone to turn to talk about his problems. And so yeah, that's his parents. They're not really in the play very much. It seems like they do care for him, just not very directly. And so whenever Romeo has issues, they tend to push people like Benvolio, uh, Romeo's cousin and close friend, to try and help him. Now he is kind of the calm one. Benvolio is convinced that he can help Romeo fix all of his problems, helping him get over Rosalind, helping him fall in love with Juliet. Um, and he represents this idea that like love can kind of solve everything. He doesn't like the feud. He doesn't like that everyone fights, and so that's kind of what he's committed to, is helping people actually like be nice to each other and like each other and fall in love. And that I think is a good transition to the House of Verona. So we've mostly talked about Romeo and Juliet's families, the Montagues and the Capulets, as we saw in the prologue. Most of the stories about them. They are prominent families in the city of Verona, but they're not in charge. Okay, the House of Verona is the Prince Aeschylus, and then the Count Paris, and this other guy Mercutio, who hangs out with Romeo. This is the family that's actually like the prince, the king, the people in charge of the city. So like I said, Prince is in charge. He represents the law. He makes all the rules, and he also really wants peace in the community. He wants people to stop fighting. Count Paris, uh, he's kind of a frat boy. He's just rich. He happens to be in the ruling family, and he wants to marry Juliet. That's really his only interaction in the story. And lastly, Mercutio, before we go to the next video, is close friends with Romeo and Benvolio, and he is super reckless. Okay, he also starts a lot of fights, especially with Tybalt, and just causes